Hi, everyone. I know everyone's just coming into the meeting now, so I appreciate your time and attention for this presentation as we begin the Stritch School of Medicine Second Look events for 2025. Thank you all for being here. This is the first day of our Second Look effort. There will be 2 days of virtual programming, followed by our in-person event, which will be Friday, April 4th. So if you've RSVP'd for that, we should have communicated all the information to you so far. But again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us and we'll make sure that we have a lot of opportunities to put into the chat our email address if you need to contact us. So today we have the good fortune of an initial presentation that will provide you with an overview of Stritch Culture. We have our Vice Dean of Professional Formation who will speak to you shortly on the topic of thinking about a Stritch culture and who we want to be. And again, I think that's very important as we try to connect with you throughout the next 3 days. And there are some themes that we feel are important to convey. Obviously, you'll see a lot of references to building community and answering medicine's call, which we fully believe and understand as part of your discernment for medical school, which is why you're here today. And again, I think it's important to recognize and see over time, you'll hear a lot of these messages kind of being repeated, but I just want to initially let them be known. That way, when you hear them and incorporate them into the other context of presentations, you'll understand. So we are constantly helping our candidates understand that medicine is a demanding and rigorous and sometimes very stressful pursuit. And then we're obviously here to help in that regard as our resources and facilities help you navigate your training program. The program itself is a very service-oriented profession, and the vocation of medicine is something that you should be really deeply discerning through personal considerations. And again, this is not the kind of thing you can turn on and off. It's going to be something you're living with for a very long time. So being able to understand how it's going to shape and affect your life, very important. We obviously are going to put you in a position to hear from a lot of our faculty, some of which you'll hear from today. We want you to trust these individuals who have been here for many years and have cultivated the type of culture and academic rigor and outcomes that we have seen our students go successfully into residency with and practice medicine. And we'll have different opportunities for you to hear from some of our alum who have gone off and done great things in medicine. We also want you to feel and understand the resources that are here for you to help you build that strength and awareness about the needs that you have to pursue your medical education. And obviously, I think overall, the level of engagement that we hope you will consider is one that will be vital and on campus and engage with our students and your fellow classmates. So I hope that that is all pretty clear and will become more manifest over the next 3 days. So part of my responsibilities today are to introduce our speakers. And our first speaker, as I've mentioned, is our Vice Dean for Professional Formation. He's also Associate Professor of Bioethics, Dr. John Hart. So Dr. John Hart is about to send his loving remarks to you. And then I'll be back to share our next speaker. So Dr.
Hey, neighbors, thanks so much. It's really good to be with all of you today, friends, and I have the joy, as Daryl indicated, of saying a word about our culture. I think the first thing that I would want to say to you is that, like the word cultivate, culture calls us to something about creating a context in which we're capable of growing. In the same way that a field needs to be regularly cultivated to support crop, a culture allows human beings to grow and develop. So the first thing I'd want to flag for you as you make this decision about Stritch is that we are a place that values serious reflection, our capacity to look at our lives, to think through our decisions, both before we make them and after we make them, to see if they were the right ones to make, to see if they are serving our purposes on becoming the kinds of people we want to be. So as we begin today, and as I hope I get to meet some of you later this week, I want to just pose a few questions to you. Consider it your first engagement with reflection at Stritch. Did I have a sense that I would trust these people with my education after listening to them today? Is this a community I want to join and contribute to? Did I feel animated, curious, or inspired by what happened at Second Look at Stritch? It is worth paying attention to your responses to these kinds of questions, friends, because oftentimes the subjective experience of how we feel affectively in our gut, as it is oftenly said, can be of profound value in clarifying how we make a decision. And given that any accredited medical school is going to give you an excellent medical education here in the United States, and if you're fortunate enough to have a choice about where you might go to medical school, we want you to make a decision that serves you. So think carefully about whether we are a good fit for you. Having reviewed your applications, we feel confident that you're a good fit for us. Second point, we're a culture that prizes becoming excellently trained in medicine. I'm looking at 3 physicians here on my screen, 1 a recent grad, 2 dear colleagues, all of whom are first-rate, excellent physicians. But for us at Stritch, training for excellence in medicine is about training for the profession. What do I mean by that? I mean that in choosing us, you're choosing a place that believes in the idea that medicine calls its practitioners to make their lives a gift to the world. We are interested in you deeply, but we are as interested in who you will be for the people you will serve in this beautiful profession. So I want to invite you to take that seriously. Becoming an excellent physician requires a narrowing of your interests and options. This is the part where I talk about sacrifice, friends. Think this through in your life. Some things that you cherish and love, you may have less time for. Others you may have to set aside for a time. The demand is real, the stress will be evident, and the commitment is required. Know that we are here for you through this process. Do not do it alone. Reach out for help at all times, whenever you feel like you might need it. And remember this, it's maybe appropriate that the professional baseball season has just started because like baseball, medicine is a game with a long season. Training is long. I'd want to invite you right now to remember something that you may not have thought about. Many of your patients are more than likely alive already today. They do not know you. They do not know that you are going to be a doctor. But given the dedicated work of your coming years, you are going to be a person who will change their lives. And it will happen on a day and a place that none of us yet know. But I promise you that it's going to happen. You will enter a room. You will introduce yourself and ask the question in one way or another, or simply by your very presence in that coat. Communicate to that person in need, I am here for you. How can I help you today? That's because you will be a physician. And in doing so at a place like Stritch, we imagine you're doing that in a way that makes your life a gift to others. Those others who are in need of your knowledge, your kindness, your compassion, your expertise, and your strength. Let me close with a brief reflection on your happiness. When I think about Stritch culture, one thing that comes to mind is that from our perspective, medicine is a constant invitation to engage a life of happiness that is rooted in love. We hold to the idea, friends, that some lives are better than others. Please hear me carefully. Not some lives are more valuable than others. All lives have equal value. But some lives are better than others. Lives that are rooted in love rather than hate, hope rather than cynicism, generosity rather than selfishness, truth rather than manufactured lives. These are lives that we deem appropriately as good and worthwhile and valuable. And generosity is at the heart of medicine. By becoming a physician, you make your life a gift to others by the very nature of the profession. And in doing so, here's the bit of good news on which I'd like to close. While I have focused so much on your capacity to become the kind of physician who will give his or her life away as an act of service to people in need, it's good to remember that we also know that this is the key to human happiness. The world's great religious traditions, the world's great philosophical traditions, and the contemporary psychology of happiness come together in telling us the same thing. Mysteriously, when we give our lives in service to others, we find our lives more meaningful, more full, more happy, more joyful. So let me close then with this observation. I hope that this is as a hope-filled and joyful day for you as it is for me as I think about the possibility of you matriculating here at Stritch. Today, in a kind of beautiful and quiet way, a new invitation to a life of joy and happiness is opening in your life. And we'd be thrilled if you were to join us at Stritch in that unfolding. I'll stop there and return it to you, Dean Neighbors.
Thank you as always, Dr. Hart, for your amazing remarks. Dr. Hart will be available to speak to the candidates in our Q&A session. Right now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Dina Kashawi. Dr. Kashawi is an obstetrician gynecologist at CARE New England Medical Group and a clinical instructor at Brown University. She attended DePaul University for her undergraduate studies and the Stritch School of Medicine for her medical school training. Dr. Kashawi has launched Hijab in the Operating Room, an educational resource about Muslims in medicine as trainees, students, patients, and physicians. Her work has inspired policy changes and helped to create an inclusive environment for hijab-wearing Muslim women in medicine. Dr. Kashawi is kind enough to join us today, and it looks like in her travels, she was able to find a way to do this at I believe, the Boston Logan Airport. So hopefully that'll all work out. She's going to discuss her policy and advocacy efforts with the AMA and her perspectives on being a student here at Stritch, which ended in 2020. So without further ado, Dr. Dina Kashawi.
Hello, thank you everyone. My apologies for taking this at Logan Airport. Chicago has a little bit of a storm going on right now, so I had to get out as quick as possible to make it here in Providence. Like Dean Neighbor said, I'm currently a clinical instructor at Brown University, and I'm an OBGYN physician. I graduated Stritch in 2020 in the start of COVID, but my experience prior to that was quite an enlightening time at Stritch. So I started medical school almost a decade ago. And in 2016/2017, my first year of medical school, there were, as you'll come to learn, a lot of clinical opportunities to shadow, to enter the operating room, to have patient care quite early. There's a longitudinal course that we take called patient-centered medicine. And there was a shadowing group that I joined as a first year to be able to shadow an anesthesiologist, because at the time I wasn't sure what I wanted to be, and it was my first exposure into medicine. So as Dean Neighbors alluded to it, I had a very particularly rough experience in my first time in the operating room where, because I wore hijab, people weren't quite aware of how to accommodate for that, what to do. And reason being was because it was just never a problem before. Many hospitals have not had medical students or residents that wore hijab. Loyola was not unique with that. And when I came in for my shadowing experience for the first time as a first-year student, none of the staff, the OR staff, the nurse manager, or the scrub tech really knew how to accommodate or what I could do with my hijab. So I was asked to leave the operating room and figure out sort of a safe accommodation that would be substerile for the operating room, but also that would not affect any patient care and whatnot. And that sort of was my like origin, like villain story or whatever they call it. And that was my mission from there on out, to make sure that nobody else who would follow into my shoes afterward would have the same experience that I did. Because as you can imagine, a first-year student being asked to leave the operating room, you don't really have much of a voice to advocate for yourself. So that day I left the operating room, I went to my classes, which were obviously right across the hall at the main campus. And then afterward, I went to the suite where all of the deans are sitting, and I spoke with Dean Neighbors and I spoke with Dean Mendez, and I told them a little bit about what happened. And I mentioned to them that, this was such a sour experience for me that I wanted to make sure there was some sort of long-lasting change ever since then. And with the help of all of the administration at Stritch, they pointed me to a few people at the hospital who would help to create a policy for Loyola. So one of which was the department chair of infectious disease, and then some other people within that department, as well as the administration from the larger hospital that like the hospital system that owns Loyola University Medical Center. So over the course of my first year, I started writing a policy that allowed women who wore hijab to enter the operating room. And I used information from places all over the world with physicians who had women who wore hijab. And I talked about, how there's no difference between wearing this, for example, and wearing a surgical cap or a bouffant in terms of infection risk. And we wrote out this policy and we pitched it to Loyola University Medical Center. And it, went with passing with flying colors. Everybody had strong support to pass this policy within the hospital level. So we were able to get that change at the Loyola University Medical Center level. And then we pushed it over to the Stritch side of things, where we were able to change the policy with the clerkship directors for general surgery and OBGYN, obviously where they'd be spending a lot of time in the operating room. And from then on out, I used that inspiration as a way to create some sort of long-lasting legacy that would really help not only myself, but people that would follow after me. Loyola had, when I was in medical school, the American Medical Association as a student group, as they have plenty of opportunities for you to join, hobbies or niches of what you're interested in. So I joined the American Medical Association as a second year, right as I was rising into my second year. And this was an organization with a lot of like-minded people who wanted to create some sort of long-lasting change in medicine that was either help to improve patient outcomes or physician outcomes. And so I remember talking about this policy with a couple of the other upperclassmen that were there, and many of them mentioned that us as medical students have the ability and the authority to write policy, write resolutions, and pass it on a local level, either from your state or on a regional level, like your district, or a federal level. So with the guidance of some of the medical students at Loyola who are part of the American Medical Association, I took that policy that we made at Loyola and used that as a blueprint to develop a national policy. And we took this to the American Medical Association's House of Delegate, which if you think of it, it's kind of like our federal equivalent of like the House of Representatives and Senators, where you have people from all of these different regions that would vote on whether or not this policy is something that American Medical Association wants to adopt. So in 2018, the American Medical Association adopted the hijab in the OR policy, hijab in the operating room policy, and they actually used the policy that we created at Loyola as the standardized template in terms of what they recommend other hospitals, other medical schools, and other training programs to include. So it was a big win for me, and a big win for really anybody who wore hijab, and educators who knew that they were going to have students who wore hijab. And from then on out, the American Medical Association really helped to lobby other larger organizations to make this a standardized thing within all hospitals. So they pushed for other organizations like the Association for Perioperative Nursing, and those are the people who write all the rules about substerile, instructions and things of that sort. And then ACGME, which is what accredits all of our residency programs. And the AMA helped to lobby with those organizations. And so then it became a mandated change of policy for both the ACGME, which now requires that all residency programs have some sort of accommodation to allow women who wear hijab to enter the operating room. And then the Association for Perioperative Nursing now has changed their policy in line actually with Loyola's policy to say that people who wear hijab and actually any sort of religious garment, so things like a yarmulke or a turban, would be allowed to be worn in the operating room so long that it fits certain specifications. So you can imagine as a medical student, when you see the impact of your policy and you see how strongly supported you are as a medical student to pursue that, it ends up being something that you want to continue throughout the rest of your career. And obviously, you go to medical school to be a clinician, and there are plenty of medical schools across the country that are going to make you a good clinician. But what really differentiated Stritch for me was the ability to pursue other endeavors outside of just my academic rigor and my academic courses that allowed me to be the physician that I wanted to be, both for myself and for my community. And so that time with the American Medical Association and with policy writing ended up sort of catapulting a career for me in policy and resolution writing. And so throughout my third and fourth year of medical school, I drafted probably close to 20, 30 resolutions, submitted them over the course of my end of third year, end of fourth year when the American Medical Association hosts their meeting. Of the 20-ish, 30-ish, I would say maybe 5 of them actually became policies that are now regularly adopted within, either medical education or the hospital systems. And then when I went into residency, I carried that work with me. And I was very fortunate to be at a residency program that also supported me in my endeavors with advocacy and policy work. So I, in my 4 years of residency, worked to help get the demographic identifier of Middle Eastern and North Africans listed on our census for 2030 and the smaller census for 2025. And that was all with the help of the American Medical Association and other smaller state legislations to help push the fact that, as Middle Eastern North Africans, as Arabs, we didn't really have our own identifier, and we were thrown into this conglomerate of white, which, as you can imagine, we have very different health outcomes and very different factors that influence our well-being and our health. And so, with that policy, we were able to push it on the local level. So Illinois was actually the first state that passed the demographic identifier of Middle Eastern and North African on the Illinois state census in 2021. And then we pitched it to the federal level, and the American Medical Association helped to lobby with that as well. And then in 2023, the United States government mentioned that they were going to include the Middle Eastern North African on the US Census. And I mentioned this story as well as the story for hijab in the OR to show that even though you're a medical student or even though you're a resident, you have a substantial amount of impact in really whatever level that you choose to do. For me, I wanted to make an impact on a local level for medical students like myself who wore hijab. And then when I saw the impact, I wanted to spread that to the national level. And same when it came time for the census work, I wanted to start on a local level, and then we were able to catapult that into a national level, a national initiative. And fortunately for me, policy and advocacy work is something that fills my cup and something that continues to give me inspiration as a clinician. And when I was interviewing for my jobs as an attending, you submit your CV, they take a look at it, and my work with the American Medical Association and my policies are listed on it. So it always comes up like, do you anticipate continuing this kind of work when you're an attending? Do you know what that looks like? What kind of support can we offer you? Things of that sort. So that being said, when I was applying for jobs, I was really focusing on being at an institution that allows me to continue my policy work and allows me to continue to advocate for patients, both, within my field of OBGYN, especially given the current political climate, but also for, medical students or trainees that needed some sort of advocacy, either because of their religion or because of their gender or their background. And so I was very fortunate to land at Brown, which is in Providence, Rhode Island, a very progressive state that has a lot of legislation and a lot of policy work towards helping create equitable care for pregnant women. And so it's been a very fortunate experience for me to be able to continue that work that I've had throughout medical school and residency, and now as an attending to be able to do that. And in a sense, like to do the work that I want to, which is obviously be an OBGYN. So I still deliver babies and I still do surgery and I have clinic, but 1 day a week, half a day a week, I put that work towards resolution writing, policy work, advocacy work, and we take that to Capitol Hill. We take that to Washington, D.C. We do advocacy days, and those are things that I've fortunately been able to continue, even after I've graduated medical school. And like Dr. Hart mentioned earlier, wherever you go or wherever you get accepted to, every single medical school in the United States is going to give you an education, and it's going to give you a good education, right? That's the only way they're able to be accredited. You're going to learn the same drugs everywhere. You're going to learn the same anatomy everywhere. You're going to learn the same diseases, right? Throughout whatever school you end up in the United States. But what really differentiated Loyola for me was I wanted to be at a place that allowed me to be a good doctor for the world and be a good doctor to the world. So I wanted to have some sort of impact aside from just my silo of, clinical care in Chicago or wherever I decided to practice. I wanted to be able to make some sort of impact that would support community service, social justice, that really, when we talk about, healthcare for all or human rights, we want equitable care for everybody, that really embodied that spirit. And for all of you who are here today at Second Look, one of the things you should really focus on when it's coming time for you to make your decision about where you should go to medical school is where you're going to get that kind of support for what is going to fill your cup. For me, it was things like policy and advocacy work. For some of my other classmates in medical school, it was things like building educational curriculum or creating student groups for human rights or healthcare issues, things of that sort. And, I still keep in touch with all of my best friends from medical school. I saw one of them just last week, and we're all very thankful and grateful for our time at Stritch, because it really helped we attribute a lot of our success to Stritch and the support that we got at Stritch, and the fact that both the administration, the clinicians, the educators, we all share this value of creating equitable care for everybody, having a passion for social justice, and making sure that every person is treated like a whole holistic person as opposed to just the disease process. And it's something that you'll notice, Loyola trainees, Loyola graduates are impeccable physicians, and we have a name across the country. When I tell people when I'm at Brown, that I'm from Loyola, a lot of people recognize it, and they, all know somebody who knows somebody who graduated from there. So it's been, a wonderful experience to be able to continue my policy work throughout. Very thankful to Loyola for really putting that stepping stone for me and pushing me and supporting me throughout the time. And as you can imagine, the fact that I'm willing to take this from an airport while I'm trying to make my way back home tells you that I really appreciated my time at Loyola, and I want to give back and pay that forward, because ultimately, without my time at Loyola, I would not be the clinician I am today, and I would not have the experiences that I've had to really attribute my success to that. So thank you all for having me. I apologize for the awkward background, but I wish you all the best, and congratulations on making it into Stritch. It is a wonderful school, and best of luck with everything. Dean, neighbors can give you my email address for anybody who has personal questions or any specific questions. We'll put it in the chat, or however, Dean neighbors, you want to give them my Gmail address.
We can absolutely do that, and we can place it in the chat. You can send it directly to us or to me directly, and I'll make sure that happens. But I just want to thank you for inspiring our pre-meds coming into the class and connecting with us. You continue to make us proud with your efforts, and I can recall several opportunities when you were just the first year, sort of provide you with what I could in terms of guidance. And, I'm just so proud of all you've accomplished and will accomplish. So thank you for taking the time today. So I want to make sure that all the candidates are prepared with their questions. This is now the Q&A portion of our program. So you have the opportunity to place in a queue, the Q&A queue, questions for our panelist. So I will briefly introduce our panelist. Panelists, please feel free to provide additional context to your role here at Loyola, but you've already met or have heard from Dr. John Hart and Dr. Kashawi. So I'm going to introduce the remaining members of the panel. We have with us today Dr. Greg Gruner. Dr. Gruner is our Vice Dean for Medical Education. He is a professor of neurology and a neuromuscular disease specialist. He's also a Stritch alum and holds has plenty of time for additional education as an MBA and a Master's of Health and Health Professions Education. So, very dynamic individual. Glad he can be with us today. We also have Dr. Jim Winger. Dr. Winger is the Associate Professor of Family Medicine and a course director for our Patient-Centered Medicine 1 course. And we have as well Dr. Neil Clipstone. Dr. Clipstone is the Associate Professor of Molecular Pharmacology and Neuroscience and is an Associate Dean for Medical Education. So thank you all for being here. So as we start to see some of the questions trickle in, we will provide you with the opportunity to hear from those from the candidates themselves. But for now, what I have are some questions that were sent in advance. So I will direct the question specifically to one of you or all of you. Feel free to answer as you see fit. I'll start with really kind of just segueing from the initial overture that Dr. Hart provided. So this question is for you, Dr. Hart. In what ways do your mission and philosophy, and again, this is in advance, so our mission and our philosophy, how does that set Stritch apart from other medical schools?
Thanks, Daryl. So a lot to be said here, but I'll try to be brief. I think I hinted towards what I think is a fundamental point of accent for us, because it's not to diminish the noble and good missions of our peer medical schools here in the U.S. They're all extraordinary places, doing really excellent work. So part of what differentiates medical school, I think, is what gets accented. And I think one of the gifts of coming to a place like Stritch that has this rich tradition of being Jesuit and Catholic, this faith-based tradition, while we are a beautifully diverse and robust institution for people of all religious traditions and no religious tradition at all, I think what commonly unites this place and makes it a point of distinction is an embrace by a significant number of us, faculty, staff, and students alike, who really do think of medicine as an act of service. You know, I'd flagged in my opening remarks that we want to approach medicine as an act of love for the world. And for those who might, ascribe to a perspective of faith, there's general unanimity and agreement that we think of God as love. But if you don't come from this from a place of faith, you will find a hospitable and wonderful home here. But we would invite you and suspect that you will be a person who would want to make your profession one that is dedicated to other human beings in need as an act of service and love. So that's one thing I would say. Another thing I would say is that because of the work of Dean Neighbors and his extraordinary team in admissions and all of our interviewers, we embody that old business phrase that personnel is policy, meaning that the people that you bring into a place kind of shape what the place is, right? The building is the building. The spirit of the place, the culture of the place is shaped by the people who occupy it. So what sets us apart? No kidding, all of you do. It's the energy, it's the commitment, it's the sacrifice, it's the dedication, it's the sense of humor, it's the friendship that makes a place distinctive. And if some of you have had the hopefully privilege of visiting us in person and interviewing in person, many of you, I think, have a sense that the place feels that way. So I'll stop there, Dean Neighbors, knowing that there's probably many other questions, and I'll go on far too long.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. The next question is for Dean Gruner. Dr. Gruner, this question is about mentorship. What type of mentorship is provided by Stritch faculty to students, and how does this sort of manifest itself in the training program?
Sure. I think one of the things when you first begin medical school, in many ways, is sort of entering the candy shop. Everything you thought about doing, now you're exposed to. But to help smooth out things, to kind of help you get going, is we actually structure within the program specific forms of mentorship. Okay, so as you first begin, one of your first mentors is going to be the person who's going to be in the patient-centered medicine course or the doctoring course, and they'll be with you for all the years that you're here. So it's a point of contact. But I think what happens after that is you end up with multiple different people who serve different roles, which help guide you. And I think Dina, brought up a great point, is that the mentorship that you get can be a little bit of mentorship or a lot. Dina was high energy. She still is, which makes us proud of her. So her mentorship was just really kind of finding someone to talk to a little bit, being given a direction to go, and then she took off, and then she identified other people to help her. So we provide, I think, that core structure of what sort of mentorship you need as you begin. But as you begin, each of you is going to be an individual. You're going to find something that really sort of grabs you. And then you are going to be sort of led into, or then you will develop a specific role with one of the clinical faculty or basic science faculty. So we help you along the way. But in many respects, the mentors that you get and the roles that they play will vary depending on what you need. Thank you, Dean Ebers.
Thank you, Dean Gruner, for that response. The next question is for Dr. Winger. Dr. Winger, this question has to do with the clinical training. Similar to the first question, what typically differentiates the clinical training environment at Stritch from other medical schools?
Thank you, Dean Neighbors. That's a good question, and I will just remind everyone as we go forward, you will hear some of the same themes coming up in many of these answers. And that's because of, as Dr. Hart mentioned, just a lot of the undercurrents that exist here at Stritch. So training, okay, so to one extent, as many of us have mentioned, to be accredited here in the United States, all of us medical schools have to reach the same similar standards, right? So that's why, as you all know, when you have applied to and looked at many different medical schools, a lot of it is very, very similar, and that's true. And there's kind of no way around that, because that's what LCME and other organizations have determined. That's what you need to have to teach students medicine in this country. On top of that, though, you will see themes emerging at different places. And again, not to just echo what everyone said, the themes that we see here are themes of service for others. And whether that comes sort of strictly from a Jesuit ideal, which it is, or is a product of sort of the institutional memory, which is supplied very much by the faculty and the student body here. It's both. But most briefly, I would say that is one of the differentiators you'll see here at Stritch. We start both in formal curricular ways your first year, and myriad informal extracurricular ways your first year, with opportunities to learn about and to serve others, whether it's strictly within a medicine realm or a medical education realm, or other ways. But that seems to be a thread that continues both from your first day of orientation here through and past graduation.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Winger. The next question is for Dr. Clipstone. So this is kind of a two-part question. And I'm going to kind of add a little bit to this. So the general question is, what academic resources are provided to students to help them with their exam process at Stritch, whether that be in the basic science coursework, whether that be preparing for STEP exams. But I would also add for you to respond to the question as, from your perspective, like how can students help themselves? So I guess that's a two-part question. How do Stritch and their faculty and the academic progress of the coursework, how does that prepare students for exams? And then additionally, how would students kind of help themselves in that process?
Thanks, Daryl. Yeah, I'm going to try and answer the question. As you know, I recently got diagnosed with a very painful condition. Today is not a good day, so I might have to stop. I mean, first and foremost, the preparation is through the coursework, through the M1 and M2 years. Those courses are aligned with the content in USMLE Step 1. And we know from our data analysis over the years that performance in our courses directly correlates with passing Step 1. There's no question about that. So we feel confident that when students get through the curriculum, they're going to be well positioned to pass Step 1. If we break that down onto individual courses, students that require help during the course, so I would say 80–85% of our students do wonderfully in everything that they do. But there are some students, for whatever reason, might struggle. And in those cases, there's a number of resources available, first and foremost, to the course directors. I'm the course director for the M2 pharmacology course. I also help with host defense and host pathogens in the first year. And when students are struggling, I always reach out to them to come in and talk to me, and we talk about how to prepare for the course, how to study appropriately. Students that come in and have that conversation tend to do well. The worst thing you can do is to ignore that email and not talk and not take advantage of the resources that are provided to you. So in response to the second part of Dean Neighbor's question, how students can help themselves, is to avail themselves of all of the resources that are being provided. And so, as I said, a lot of that, from a content perspective, comes from the course directors. We also have, excuse me, an Office of Academic Center for Excellence with specific individuals who are trained to provide students assistance in academic preparation, as well as providing accommodations where necessary and directing them to resources that might be helpful beyond the academic realm. Beyond, just going off of that, we also have a well-established wellness center here. Students might struggle for a variety of reasons. Not all of them are academic. Some of them, quite clearly are issues with wellness, and we have a well-established wellness program right above me here that does an outstanding job in helping students and whatever issues come up. As we move to Step 1, particularly in the second year, we have a number of preparation sessions throughout the year that bring back first year material and trying to integrate it, trying to provide students with insights into how to deconstruct USMLE questions, how to apply their foundational knowledge to answer those questions. And then towards the end of that period, we have a series of practice exams that allow students to gauge how well prepared they are to take Step 1. I should also say that we provide, thanks to Dr. Gruner's largesse, subscription availability to UWorld, which is the question bank that a lot of students will use in preparation for Step 1. We also provide First Aid, which is a preparation study book for first aid. Moving into the clerkship years, a lot of the preparation there is all of the clerkships now have MBME shelf exams as their principal assessment, so that aligns very nicely as a preparation tool for USMLE Step 2. We also provide UWorld as well as First Aid for Step 2. And certainly we're seeing great effects of probably within the last several years of moving from departmental exams to step exams as a good way of students preparing for step 2 and then moving on from there. I think with that, I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clipstone. I appreciate you fighting through it today. The next question I have is for Dr. Kashawi. This is actually from one of our current participants, Grace, and she actually had a note here. She wanted to thank Dr. Hart for his beautiful and thoughtful words and the wonderful introduction to Second Look. So kudos
I
to you,
noticed you took
Dr.
it
Hart.
down, Daryl. I won't take that personally. Thank you, Grace, for your kindness.
And then Grace follows up with a question for Dr. Kashawi. She would love to hear more about different opportunities that you may have experienced to be involved in OBG specific advocacy and efforts during your training here at Stritch.
So I was very fortunate when I was in medical school that a lot of the OBGYN clinicians that either taught us through our clerkships or when we were doing our M2 specific like OBGYN education were heavily involved with ACOG, so the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and that's our like governing body for OBGYNs. It's kind of, you'll come to learn that every specialty has their own governing body that puts forth like policy, practice guidelines, things of that sort. A lot of the clinicians that were at Loyola were either directly involved with ACOG, so either helping push forward policy, helping push forward educational curriculum, or were involved at a maybe not as direct level, more of like a local state level with legislation in the state of Illinois. And the benefit, which I will always highlight, is our hospital is right next door to the medical school. So, you know, when you're done with, for example, your classes, you can go meet with some of these clinicians and some of these physicians. And so when I was in medical school, we would have like an advocacy day specifically for OBGYN. And the clinicians who would regularly participate in that would send out an email to people who had shown interest before. I think one of my 4 years I went to Springfield with them, but they had these opportunities readily available for medical students and residents that were at Loyola to be able to participate in that. So it really is what you make of it in that aspect as well. Like there are opportunities, like Dean Gruner said, you have to, you know, Loyola has all of those things available to you. It's a matter of whether or not you're going to put in the effort to use that opportunity and flourish through it.
Thank you, Dr. Kashawi. The next question is, I saved the difficult questions for the Vice Dean. So Dr. Gruner, this comes from the Advanced Student Question Bank. So upon President Trump's limited funding for research in various areas, are there any specific research opportunities that will be or might be affected for incoming medical students and the Stritch community? And if so, how will faculty and the medical school prepare for that?
Thank you, Dean Neighbors. Of course, it is a difficult question. The policies in general have been affecting all medical schools. Now, fortunately for us, it has not been as disrupted as it has been for other schools. So all students who are involved in different research opportunities, whether they're basic science or clinical, have really not been impacted to any significant degree. And how do we prepare for it? It's difficult. I mean, it's hard to know how to prepare for something where something is different every single day. So we at the school, we at the university we stepped back a little bit, taken a more global view of things to determine where we're going, what things could be impacted, and how can we support them. So research programs and things are all ongoing and continue to go. Faculty are brought up to date as to different policies as they change. There's a specific website, internal website, which is available for them so they know what's going on. Regular meetings with the whole group. So I think our preparation is one trying to map out where we think things will go and trying to address it to the best that we can. And fortunately for us right now, it has not been incredibly impacted on us, and it certainly has not been impacted on the students and all of their research activities. So far, I think we're holding our own. I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Gruner. So the next question is more or less an open-ended question. Really just find how this kind of affiliates with the work that you do. But the question is pretty simple. What role does faith or faith-based practice have in the medical school curriculum and or training program? So I'll just leave that open for anyone.
I'm happy to jump in, Daryl, and maybe some colleagues will want to join. You know, when I think about this, I think about it in two ways. One is how our faith-based mission shapes culture, and you've heard me talk about that. And then the second way, which I think is this question might be pushing a little more specifically around curriculum and clinical training. In terms of curriculum, the answer is really not at all that I can think of quite obviously. You know, we are one, accredited by the LCME and have to meet all their requirements, and two, our mission commitments based on our faith tradition is much more a cultural influence than it is a curricular influence. That said, and Dr. Kashawi touched on this quite beautifully, you know, part of our tradition is one that makes us deeply concerned about questions of justice, equity, access, and care for the underserved. I think those topics show up, and we have faculty with deep expertise and practice commitments in those kinds of arenas. So I think that's one thing that shows up. Does that happen at other institutions? Absolutely. But as Dr. Winger had mentioned before, sometimes motivation is deeply rooted in the mission and in longstanding commitments of faculty and staff who have been here for a long time. And then the last bucket here is the one that regrettably gets the most attention and accent, but I think doesn't have as big a bearing as some people might. Some of you are probably familiar with the fact that the Catholic tradition as a religious tradition also has a very large body of philosophical and theological teaching, and that includes a really rich tradition in bioethics. And then a subset of those questions in bioethics touch on more neuralgic issues in our contemporary society, mostly around reproductive health, not exclusively so, but mostly so. So Catholic teaching, for example, prohibiting elective abortion is something that is commonly known. There are a small subset of instances of commitments that the hospital has an obligation as a Catholic institution in the United States to meet. And therefore, there are components of training that we will allow for outside electives on if students seek to pursue those. For example, specific training in termination of pregnancy is something that we have an obligation to provide by way of accreditation. We can't do some of that training here. We have an outside elective that students are allowed to do for that. Otherwise, you would find that in the clinical environment, you are being trained pretty much identically to the way you would be trained if you went to any one of our secular peer institutions by way of clinical training. I hope that answers the question, and I'll stop there and see if anybody else wants to jump in, if I missed something.
If it's okay, I'd just like to add to that from not as much an education standpoint, but as a practicing physician. So as Dean Neighbors mentioned before, I practice family medicine. So that means I see a little bit of everything, both as far as ages go and different pathologies go. I'm still working my first job. I started here with Loyola in the fall of 2008. If I felt that Catholic requirements, to put it in eloquently, were preventing me from providing the care that my patients need, I wouldn't work here. And clearly that's not how I feel. So just to know, but both from the education standpoint and the practice standpoint, this sounds trite. It's not something that detracts from your experience. It's something that adds to your experience.
That was well said, Dr. Winter. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. This is a message question. I thought I had one here, but it looks like another one popped up. And this is similar. This is an anonymous attendee. how does Stritch plan to navigate the current changing political environment to ensure that students who are dedicated to advancing health equity and health equity research are able to continue to meet their goals?
I'm happy to jump
Yeah.
in here. I didn't know if anybody else wanted to first. So it's been referenced here before. You can imagine how highly attuned the university is right now to everything that's coming out of the federal government. We, like everyone else, is watching it very closely. That includes our vice provost for research and our vice dean for research here at Stritch, who's examining potential implications for funding cuts, titles that are tied to research studies, et cetera. One of the benefits we have as a Jesuit university is that we are part of a large network of universities in the United States, 27 of them, that have a very strong lobbying presence in Washington, D.C. We are also tightly tied in with our peer institutions in those lobbying efforts. So while we want to be savvy and smart and protect our people and our mission, we're going to do that in a way that makes sure that we don't sacrifice that mission while being attentive to the places where we can avoid unnecessary conflict and standing up for what we know to be right when we have to. I think that many institutions, and for those of you who are following the news these days, many institutions are facing questions about what's negotiable and what's non-negotiable by way of their mission. And what are the principles by which they stand, and what are the principles that they think aren't necessarily core to their identity and structure. I think that we have a very good sense of that and a group of leaders who are highly attuned to it. Are we concerned and attentive to it? Yes. Are we feel like we're living from a place of management chaos and disaster? Not in any way. I think we're going to see our way through this, and we're going to keep watching as things come together, stay in conversation with our peer groups, and know that there's strength in numbers as we approach these problems. I'll stop there if anybody else wants to weigh in.
Oh, John, excuse me. John, I think you hit it on the head as to who we are. Remember, we're over almost 500 years old. The reason this whole idea, this whole thought, this whole process, which has been incorporated within the school, within the mission, within the society, the reason it's still there is because it works. And I don't think, in healthcare itself, in general, caring for the other person is what we've always done. In fact, you cannot be a physician, okay, if you in any way feel that that's a problem or a difficulty. So, I mean, that's sort of the root of really all physicians in general, the belief. I think we look at the institution, but I think we also look at ourselves and how we behave as individuals, because I think that's also as important. So as individuals, we have to recognize the strength of diversity, the importance of caring for the other individual. And that's intrinsic to all physicians. I think it's much more rooted within our school, within the Jesuit community. And really, it's almost more than, to me, a mission. It's something which sort of has to be inculcated or brought into your life in general. And I think people who apply to medicine, I think already have that in them. So I think that's going to be, to me, the major saving grace is that that's what we believe as individuals, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
All right, thank you very much. We have another anonymous question that I think I'm gonna combine with another question that we had provided earlier. So again, two-part question. Oh, it kind of went away. All right, well, let me go back to my initial question then. Is there a discussion of eliminating internal rankings as a move to the grading system of a true pass-fail institution? So I will leave that, start with Dr. Clipstone perhaps, and then obviously anyone who cares to respond.
I mean, right now, no. So we are pass fail in that courses, have a set cutoff for pass or fail. Beyond that, we do take scores into account when generating rank lists and quintiles. And we do that because we feel it's helpful for students as they apply to residency. I know there's been some discussion, and certainly at some schools, there's been discussion and execution of going pass-fail throughout the entire 4 years of medical school. That may very well work for some institutions. For our institution, we feel that when we put the dean's letter together, we try to paint the best picture we can to make each student the most attractive we can and the most competitive in whichever specialty they choose to go into. So I would say right now, although we've had those discussions, there's no intention to go completely pass fail.
I can maybe add to what Dr. Clipstone brought up. We could easily flip a switch and go completely pass fail. Okay, the reason we have never done that is because residencies don't want us to. So residencies that you apply to want to have some discriminating features in years 3 and 4 on the clerkships, which help them make their decision. Going to pass fail in years 1 and 2 was really based on the first step exam going pass fail, as well as our feeling was that we could perhaps reduce the amount of anxiety or stress that students encountered as they were sort of working hard to get a specific number, during that period of time. That reduced that anxiety there a little bit and moved the anxiety downstream a little bit. And now students are focusing on something different. So at this point in time, we have no intention of doing that. And it's really based on the logic of what residency programs want to see. And what they really want to see is performance in years 3 and 4. And they want to see some discrimination. And they are interested in ranking of how students do, as well as how they do on their second licensing exam. That's step 2, okay, which occurs at the end of your 3rd year, and which our students actually do very well in. That's my addendum.
Well said. Thank you very much. The next question is from Layla. Layla has a question for Dr. Winger. So what is the one thing that has led you to practice at Loyola, and what has made you stay?
That's a big question, but a good one. And to be fair, it's not one thing, but I can point out several really important things. And again, as we started today talking about, it's not surprisingly groups of people, right? I absolutely stay for the students. I entered my attending hood, if that's a word, with the intention of, progressing my presence in academic medicine and doing more teaching and administration. And so the opportunity to work with students and work with curriculum has always been really important to me. And Loyola has given me that opportunity in spades. As someone mentioned, I direct the patient-centered medicine course, but I've also been a small group facilitator, even starting a year before I work here, when I was at another community hospital doing residency. So in that time, I think that's like 17 years or so, I've gotten pretty close with about 170 students. And just being able to say that is so wonderful. And so that is absolutely something that continues to fuel my passion to work here. And then the other big group that I'm absolutely indebted to are the faculty, my colleagues who work here too. Many of the people that you're looking at right now have had profound roles in my development as an attending, as a medical educator, and not only the people you see here in academics, but the people I've worked with really closely in my clinic. It is really such an honor to be able to work with a lot of the people that I do. So if I had to stretch your question a little bit and say what 2 things I would say it'd be the students and my colleagues are what keep me here.
Thank you, Dr. Winger. This is another two-part question, just really kind of combining two elements of two different questions. So, and again, this is for anyone who cares to respond. How does the Stritch School of Medicine promote community and leadership among its trainees?
Dr. Hart usually starts off answering all these questions, so I'm going to jump in front of him on this one.
I'm grateful.
As far as for community, the big thing is being here. So you promote community by having individuals show up on campus. We have multiple different activities that students can be involved in. They form different groups. As Dr. Winger mentioned, in the PCM small group, which usually comprises about 10 students, they actually develop in their own sort of little mini community of sort of friends that kind of stay in touch with one another through their whole 4 years here. And part of what Dr. Hart mentioned before is that people who we accept sort of really, again, sort of come here because of the other students they meet having a similar sort of approach to life, similar sorts of beliefs and things like that. So the students who are here are really sort of one of the big recruiting sort of actions or whatever that occur, which recruit a group of students who, again, who feel the same way, do the same things. So again, for community, you have to be here. We will never be a completely virtual hybrid medical school. Everyone has shown that that's not the way to go. That never was the way to go. We try to include enough flexibility because there's other things you want to do, other activities that you want to do. As far as for leadership, again, we have multiple student-led leadership groups. I think what Dina mentioned, there's lots of opportunities to get into leadership positions or roles, which are more at a regional or a national level. So opportunities there. We actually have a leadership elective that we put on every year. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, to get those skills hampered down as well. And one thing, maybe go off a little bit on a tangent, but I really want to kind of build on one of the questions that came up before and Dr. Winger sort of answered is what distinguishes our clinical training, from other schools? We have never been a hands in your pocket medical school, which means when you do your clinical clerkships, you are part of a team of residents. You have responsibilities. You're going to be really just part of that team. You have to do the things that they do, work with them. And I think that helps our students too as they grow through that third year and their fourth year, so that when they enter their clerkships, after they enter clerkships and a residency, they're prepared to be a resident. So many schools we hear, those students may be good book-wise, but our students are good book-wise as well as being good at the patient care aspect of it. What are things you have to do, again, to take care of people? The other thing is I've been pushing, and it hasn't gone through as well as what I hope, probably because the abbreviation sounds a little bit crazy, is I always say we should not talk about medical students. You are physicians in training. And a problem with physicians in training is it's abbreviated as PIT. So I have to think of maybe something in Latin to sort of get that across. But we're training you to become a practicing physician. Okay, we're not, training you to go to Wall Street or something. You can do that if you want to. But our goal is to make sure that when you're done with your medical education, you can move into a residency program without any difficulty. And in fact, we hear that again and again and again. Compared to many other schools, our students are really prepared to do that. So if I say there's a difference in clinical training, it's those things that we do. And Dr. Winger is clearly one of the persons who spearheads that in preparing people, preparing you for a role, which again, wrap your mind around it, you're going to be doing for 40 or 50 years. Okay, so we try to help you grow as an individual. We make sure that you have the knowledge and the clinical skills to become a physician. And the important part is that you're still ready to learn more. So you have a certain hunger and appetite for that. And that's, I think, what leads to many times the success of our students. So sorry for going off on a tangent there, Dean Neighbors, but I just wanted to sort of bring that in before I forget.
Dean Neighbors, can I just amplify a point that Dr. Gruner just made? Because I think it was really an important one. Showing up is the single factor in building community. And in a post-COVID world, so many of us have become increasingly comfortable with the kind of half in, half out approach to a lot in our lives. Zoom is a gift. We're enjoying it today, right? But there are things that cannot happen without our being in one another's company. So to build community, come to this building where we're sitting today. Use these beautiful spaces. Find a way to study here, to laugh here, to trust and get to know your classmates and make them your friends. That will build community. Leadership is very much in vogue today, and I'm not opposed to it being. I'm glad that it is. Leadership opportunities are abundant at Stritch. Opportunities for student representation on committee, student interest group leadership, student government, bioethics and honors professionalism, or bioethics and professionalism honors program. There's a whole range of ways for all of you to engage in leadership. But I would say this to you, the soft skills of leadership, good communication, the capacity to persuade, the capacity to inspire and animate. Those things are communal activities. They happen in one another's company. So don't miss out on the quiet education that happens by your simply being around. That's a key piece of growing into a leader, is to function as part of a community. So I appreciated Dr. Gruner making the pairing in his comments, because I think it's key to the kind of physician you'll be. Last comment I'll make, I have a dear friend who's a physician at the University of Chicago, an excellent institution with an excellent medical school. He said to me not too long ago, I would hire a Loyola doc any day over one of ours. He didn't mean that to criticize their graduates. I said to him, why would you say that, knowing it's such a prestigious school? He said, because you train physicians. He said, I have never had a Loyola graduate join our program who didn't know what they were doing out of the gate. He said, I don't know what you're all doing over there, but you know how to train practicing physicians. And I took that as high praise that amplifies the points that Dr. Wingers and Gruner made about clinical training here.
Thank you very much. Any other responses? Excellent response. So I don't see any other questions, so I will assume that there are none, but I do have like a final opportunity for everyone to share their thoughts. And then this question is sort of the thing that we'll kind of close on. So all of our budding physician trainees on the call today have about 3 months or so before they open the fire hose, and there you go, right? So in any of your opinions, is there any advice you would give them in terms of the next 3 months, what to do, what book to read, what thing to sort of consider as they prepare for the start of medical school?
Well, Dr. Gruner always accuses me of going first, but I'm very happy to go first. So, I mean, Dean Neighbors, I'll lead up. Oh, good. Dr. Kashawi turned her camera on. She might have something to say. Here's what I would say
You
to
have
you.
something to say. I'll go after Dr. Hart.
No, I want you to go first, actually. Go ahead, Dina.
So I remember when I started medical school, everybody was recommending that we read like books about how to be a physician. There's a series of books. I can't think of his name right now. He was diagnosed with brain cancer, but he wrote a series of books like when life becomes air, or when breath becomes air, something along those lines. There's House of God. My one recommendation is to enjoy the summer before medical school starts, because that is the last time you are going to have a summer without commitment. Do not read a book. Do not think about medical school, because the 4 years that you're in medical school are going to be sufficient enough for you to get all of that information. Take this time, connect with friends, travel, see your family. I know for myself and for some of my other friends, we went back to our homeland. We saw our family that we might not have seen for years after, with the rigor of medical school. So take it easy, and hopefully you guys will have that time to read all those other books later on.
Well, Dina, that's pretty much what I was going to say. Have fun. Use this time for relaxation and joy and laughter. That is the most important thing. I wouldn't recommend reading doctor books. I'd recommend reading things that are beautiful and inspiring and engaging. I'd recommend you thinking gently and joyfully about what you're hoping for as you become a physician. If you are a journaler, keep journaling. If you're not, think about starting. Medical school is going to give you beautiful stories. If now can be a time for you simply to begin to develop a habit of that reflective practice, where you take even 5 minutes a day in quiet to think about who you are, how you want to be, what your hopes and aspirations are, and you write them down, they will serve you well on some of those dark and lonely days in medical school when you're asking yourself, was this the right decision? This is really hard. Did I really want to do this? Am I going to get through this? So if you have the capacity, don't take this as an assignment, but as an encouragement. Use this time for fun, laughter, rest, joy, and beauty. And think about how you might foster, maintain, or begin a habit of reflection, preferably in writing so that you can revisit it, that can serve you during your time as a medical student and into your profession as a physician. It is a gift that all of you will be given, and all you have to do is grab it.
Anyone else?
Of course, I have to have a comment, is that I agree. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think the thing to worry about medical school residency, it certainly appears scary. Okay, it's not an impossible thing to be able to do. If it was impossible, there wouldn't be very many physicians. Okay, but I do think it's important to kind of get to, as opportunity to get to understand yourself, your community, because you're going to have individuals and that you're going to want to keep in contact. Our dean always says, make sure you call your mom at least every other day to maintain those contacts, because that gives you strength. And enjoy the community here. And Gary, sometimes it's hard, but that's the advantage of a community. A community makes things which are hard somewhat easier and gives you the support you need on those days when you may not feel like getting out of bed.
So to slightly paraphrase Ted Lasso, he said, there is something far worse than being sad, and we'll say scared for the purposes of med school, right? There's something far worse than being scared, and that's being scared and alone. And that is something you will not be at Stritch, because there are layers and layers and oodles of people who will care for you.
I would just echo what everyone has said. Travel, see friends, read for enjoyment. But for those of you that don't live in the Midwest or the up and North Coast, I will go out and buy a very warm jacket and warm boots and gloves. Speaking as someone who moved from California to the Midwest, it would be advice well taken.
100% agree. All right. Well, if there are no other comments, I just want to thank everyone for their time. Dr. Kashawi from Boston, Dr. Winger, Dr. Hart, Dr. Clipstone, Dr. Gruner, and of course our staff here in admissions. Thank you all for participating. We will resume programming this evening. We do have a DACA session by invitation only at 6 p.m. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, but everyone should be communicated on that. And then we have our student panelists, our MSU leaders, medical student union leaders, joining us at 7 p.m. for the student leadership panel. And then tomorrow's programming we have at 11 a.m. These are all Central Time Zone considerations. A webinar on enhancing your medical education, which will provide opportunities for you to learn about our departments of ministry, public health, business administration, bioethics, and global health honors, research honors as well. And of course, another webinar with financial aid at 1 p.m. And then a really great opportunity for a webinar interview with Dr. Amy Blair, interviewing Dr. Mona Hanna who has written the book What the Eyes Don't See, which is the common read for all of you. So lots of good programming to come. We also have other events that we'll discuss tomorrow in the in-person day as well. All right. So any questions that you have, feel free to let us know at Stritch Admissions. I will put the email address in the chat in case you are not familiar with it. And other than that, we will see you at our next presentation, 7 p.m. tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Can you hear me?
Are we muted to the participants? There's only,
They're still logging off
okay.
and
All right,
they're
they're
gone. Yeah, it's just, and they're gone.
gone.
All right, nice.
Good job.
Good job indeed. You guys
I left
killed
the
it.
last couple of questions because they were a bit redundant from questions that were asked earlier. So
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was like, it's similar, but I was like, I don't know if you wanted to address them again. Okay,
yeah, I'd like to end on a happy note.
yeah.
Anyone that puts sketchy in the chat that's not going to end well.
I know. I saw that and I was like, okay.
It was also good until we saw that question.
Sketchy. I'm like,
So
okay.
maybe by virtue of not answering it, we've answered it.
Yeah, I think
You
so.
know? Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it was good. I had trouble with my link for some reason.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm
So the
gonna,
link that you were sent directly yesterday didn't work?
it worked yesterday, but it didn't work today.
Interesting.
So Hazel reached out to IT. I reached out to IT. They sent me a ticket that says my issue has been resolved. So I'm going to test the links
Yeah.
again once we log off from here. But
My
yeah.
advice is just to go with the link that you were given initially, and then we can bring you into the panel if needed. I mean, especially if it doesn't work, because again, they're sending several different links for several different sessions, so that could also be part of the confusion, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was sketchy because it let me in, but I was the only one in the webinar. So I don't know. I'm gonna communicate with IT and see what's the issue there. They gave me my own party apparently,
Wow. A Josie party.
a Josie party.
So I did see some emails coming across the screen. It looked like some candidates were having issues.
Yes, so I've been communicating with them, resent them the link. One of them told me that he's using his Loyola, his UV email, but I told him he has to use whatever he registered with.
Right.
So he was going to try to do that for the next session. So
Okay.
and then the other one couldn't get in, so I suggested the same thing. So
All right. So they are being asked questions before entering. So is that what's happening? They're like having to pass through something, or is
if when they log in as an attendee, they just have to put in their first name, their last name, and then the email.
I
At least
see.
that's how I logged in as an attendee.
Got it. Okay.
And then it allowed me to go in.
Got it. All
Yeah.
right. So then they have to use the email that they registered
with.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but
All right. Okay.
yeah, but I took care of those, so we should be good.
Okay.
From
Awesome.
Mystery and Sarah asked me for the links, so I sent them, and they were one of those attendees. Sarah and Anne Hillman from Ministry, and Sarah is the new chaplain, I guess.
So this is for tomorrow then, right?
Earlier
No,
today.
today they attended. They were
Oh,
They
really?
wanted
attendees.
I see.
Anne wanted Sarah to join in just so that because she's new, so
Got
just so
it.
she can sit in on the sessions.
So I saw, I was trying to keep track of the largest number of participants. I got 99. Did anything higher than that?
No.
Okay, we'll just
No.
mark that as,
Yeah, because we started at 88.
okay.
So yeah.
So I'll just mark that.
Yeah.
Just kind of keep an eye on that. so we can maybe make sure that we create a data set that includes like participation for each of the sessions. All right, so we'll break until 2:30.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. Nice
Thank
job,
you.
everyone.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thanks.